Was geht, liebe VeVe-Fam, und willkommen hier zu einem weiteren Livestream. Und ja, ich hoffe, ihr habt es noch nicht im Hintergrund gehört. Wir sind jetzt gleich im AMA einmal drin. Nur für euch ganz kurz zur Notiz. Ich werde mich ausklinken, also ihr werdet im Prinzip nur den Livestream sehen, weil ich muss auf jeden Fall nebenbei Notizen machen und unbedingt mal essen. Deswegen, ja, entschuldigt auf jeden Fall. Ich werde mich das ein oder andere Mal vielleicht einblenden und kurz was sagen dazu, aber prinzipiell, ja, würdet ihr im Prinzip hier nur live den Stream sehen. Jetzt würde ich aber sagen, starten wir auch direkt rüber und ich wünsche euch auf jeden Fall viel Spaß bei dem Ganzen. Schreibt gerne ansonsten trotzdem im Chat mit, würde mich auf jeden Fall sehr freuen und wir sehen uns dann auf jeden Fall später.
Emphasis on fairly. It's basically whenever we can get all of our schedules to align to record and edit a video put together. But instead of not doing one for the month of February, we figured we'd have a little party here in the Discord, just like old times. Rhys, I remember that's kind of generally where we used to do our community updates and AMAs, etc. And so we're excited to kind of get back to the roots. Also, just generally, you know, we're trying to have a renewed focus of our activities here in the Discord as we start to build out more engaging activities, ongoing ongoing stage shows like Women X VeVe have been doing a monthly or every other week. We have
right across the team itself, and over the last couple of weeks we've been kind of working very hard to not just onboard people but also move into a more modern operating structure that is really centered around how the behaviors or the capabilities that we want to focus and start to drive, build. Fundamental part of building the right development or the right company culture. And a lot of the guys that have been with us over the last couple of weeks are really excited to be actually part of building the chat with them. So they're traveling from several different places around the world to meet Dave and Dan in India itself, and I think it'll be a really, really fun day.
Wow, that's amazing. So yeah, I think that for the first time it'll be a lot. You know, probably for the first time everybody gets into the same room. Definitely on that side of the house. I know, you know, I've had the pleasure of hanging out with, you know, Rhys and David and Dan on a few occasions, either between, you know, DCon or Comic-Con or other events. But yeah, a lot of the larger team, you know, because we're so spread out around the world, you know, It's hard for all of us to kind of convene and approach some longer term strategy planning in person. So I'm glad David and Dan are making that trip. It's also awesome that I had the pleasure of meeting two new product managers over the course of last week, focused on various areas, whether that's commerce or data, and just to see the progress and fleshing out that team to the areas that we can see providing growth trajectory for the business. Can you talk a little bit more? Yeah, sorry. Can you go talk a little bit more about just kind of general structure about what from the people that have come on recently and how we're assigning resources to the various things within the kind of longer term roadmap?
Yeah, absolutely. So up until recently, we've kind of been operating using what I would call kind of the older structure and way of doing things, where there's a top-down command and control type structure where there's a roadmap and people execute. We fundamentally believe, Mr. and I, that that's not the right way to scale a modern business in 2023. And what we really want to be able to do is to really put the emphasis and ownership on the specific areas of the business that we feel is going to really allow us to scale right across the world, right? So we kind of created what we call the triple Ds, not what we call it's an established model called domain-driven development, where instead of looking at teams based on platforms like mobile, web, all that kind of stuff, we're really going to be focusing in on specific domains of behavior and of value that we feel we need to be delivering into, and that our user base and the community actually wants. So we've kind of put together top-level domains that look like onboarding. That's one, where we're actually going to be focusing in on how people get into the platform, what they see, how they experience VeVe for the first time, and really start to make that entire login and log out. And guys, there's a problem there, and we're looking to fix that right away. But the login, log out, the sign up, and the overall onboarding process of what VeVe is and how we introduce VeVe to newer consumers and newer users is going to be a key area of focus for us. The second part is actually around commerce and the buying and selling aspect of the two stores, the store and the marketplace. And we really want to focus in on being able to provide features and capability for all of the community to be able to transact and operate their areas of interest within VeVe itself, whether it's buying stuff in the store or even just finding the things that they want to be able to find properly on the secondary marketplace, and be able to acquire the things that everyone loves, right? And the last one is quite a big one. I've kind of put it under a larger domain called retention and loyalty and engagement. Retention and engagement, because that is going to be not just one domain, but there will be several subdomains that focuses on things like engagement, where it's Alcoholics, for example, being able to create content and the pain point that they've been receiving there that I've captured and completely put into the roadmap to be able to resolve at this stage. But we need a team to be able to focus on that capability and be able to really build out UGC elements that will allow people to continue to engage on the platform. Alongside that subdomain, we have the loyalty subdomain, which we'll talk a little bit more about later, which really looks at MCP, OEP, and how those two elements could be a little bit more synergistic in how they operate and how users are rewarded by the platform itself. And then, of course, lastly, there is that retention piece there that we're looking at to make sure that loyalty, engagement, they kind of work together. So these are the areas that we're kind of focusing that into. And the big point of this new setup and structure is to give us the ability to say to the teams that, ultimately there's only a finite amount of people that can tell you what we need to do. We want you to take ownership around looking at data and being able to make decisions on what's happening within your areas of domain that are important for the user base for that specific type of activity that we're looking to encourage, and really start making decisions on the roadmap and the execution of things. So those are what we would call kind of our stream-focused teams, and that gives us the ability to completely allow these teams to work on the things that matter to the most in these domains. The underlying capability that we also are focusing, we touched on this Alex earlier, is around data in itself, right? As a digital business, data is so key. And as a platform like VeVe, we have so much data. The question is how we use it and how we get it into the hands of the teams that can then use it to make better products. So putting our money where our mouth is, we've actually put a bit of effort and investment into the data stream in itself as a platform team that will enable the rest of the other domain squads to be able to execute the things that they need to execute, using data as a key piece of information in order to make the right decisions and balance out what the requirements are from a business point of view versus where we see real usability to be able to create things that people actually want to use.
Yeah, that's great. Because honestly, there's so much more to data than having just customer data and how to market to people, right? It's identifying the pain points and, as you mentioned, usability features to make sure that we're making data-informed decisions and user feedback to make a better product. So looking forward to that. I'm really excited to have met the product manager in charge of data, and I look forward to working with him from marketing, but also see what else we want to try to integrate into the roadmap and find out where certain pain points may be across the board. All right, so thank you for that. I think generally we want to give just a few updates on a few different things in the roadmap, some pending items, if you will, and then we can talk a little bit about hopefully maybe some OMI stuff or take some questions, because I think contrary to popular belief, we're not abandoning the token. I know there's some sentiment out there that seems like that's may have been the case, but I think David cleared that up. And for all of you who didn't tune into David's recent AMA with Lori at Queen's Court, it's just a matter of long-term planning and strategy around how we make sure that everything is kind of lined up together with OUP, different exchanges, etc. But Mitch, let's get back to kind of the VeVe side of the house. Let's talk about MCP. Where are we with MCP? I know we just generally had a initial alpha, if you want to call it, as opposed to a beta, where we had a small number of people test it out, and then we kind of rolled that back to make some changes. What's the latest on the rollout plan, first phase of MCP?
Yeah, so we completed the initial kind of rollout to users that has given us a lot of information. So our intent of rolling it out to a handful of users last week, I think, was to really load test some of these mechanisms that we have in the background to do some of these calculations, as well as test the accuracy and the overall effectiveness of the ranking system and the ranking calculations in the background. So what we found is that the load testing is okay as part of that test, because we tested it with some users that have large accounts. But what we did find as well is that the ranking system actually was a bit stally. It kind of didn't work the way that we wanted it to work. So what we then did was we said, okay, look, we've got enough information there. We have enough to be able to move on to address some of these components. And then rolled it back and started working on it. So the team are currently working on making those improvements and the amendments based on the feedback that we've got from the test overall. And I thought that was a really good exercise to have because you can't really predict what is going to go wrong until you get it in the hands of the community itself. And when there's only so much kind of background testing that you can do with manufactured data versus actually putting it in the hands of the user base and actually watching to see what happens. So we've got quite a bit of information there that we're working through right now. We still intend to keep to our regular cadence between 10 to 12 days worth of releases, but the work that we are doing on MCP will allow us to move into the beta phase in the coming post the next release. That next release will probably take a little bit of time to get through. So we're thinking we wanted to release something this week, but given what I've seen in the background and the team are working on, we'll probably delay that by a couple of days just to make sure that we have the ability to put the the entire system to robust testing enough so that we're confident to push the release out, and then we'll start the beta program right after that.
Okay, great. And then in terms of what's next on the roadmap, once we get into that beta phase, are there things happening concurrently, or do you have like a list of priorities that we're working through linearly? Give us the next plan of attack.
So at the moment, because we're still operating in somewhat of older structure, things do happen somewhat linearly. But the idea of us moving into the domain-based approach is to allow things to happen simultaneously. So over the next couple of weeks, we'll be moving into that structure that will allow us to move almost simultaneously across various domains. So the idea would be to allow us to speed up on that front, right? So right now, if I were to kind of talk about it linearly, because we do have to activate a transition, right? We can't just have things roll from one way to another like a cutoff. We still are working on our original schedule, which is to get MCP out and get the waitlist out. As a matter of priority, these are the two things that we're absolutely focused on to make sure that there is a new drop model coming through, ideally landing somewhere in March for the waitlist.
Okay, sorry, just for sake of repeating that, because your voice is a little low, by the way. I'm not sure if it's just me.
I'm sorry.
Oh, could you just that last sentence one more time? Not that I'm trying to make sure you repeat it, but mainly because I didn't hear it.
So we're working on two things linearly at the moment. So we are focused on MCP and getting that out into the beta program as quickly as we possibly can. And immediately after that, the team moves almost directly into working on the waitlist drop model.
Waitlist. Okay, perfect. That's what I thought. All right. Okay, so waitlist after that, great. So that's in addition to all of the kind of just general bug fixes and things that are happening concurrently. I know there was several people reporting that they were still encountering logout issues that I think you touched on the top of this call. But I assume that's something that kind of resurfaced after we originally patched it in the last update. Can you give us just a little update on that?
Yeah, that one's a bit irritating. We thought we caught it all, but we didn't get it all, which is unfortunate because we put quite a bit of effort in making sure that we were covering as many edge cases as possible. But as soon as it started resurfacing itself. We ended up setting down and said, hey, look, this is a big problem. And kind of screenshot a lot of the stuff that's coming from Twitter and Facebook to make sure that the guys understand that simple things like this need to be addressed. Simple things like this, just basic UX and user experiences that really shouldn't go wrong in 2023. We sat them down and we said, hey, let's get some focus on this one and we'll try and resolve this. So ideally, what would happen is that when we release this next code drop, it should have addressed most issues that we've seen.
Okay, and just because I'm now seeing several people share the sentiment that you're hard to hear, are you using like a headphones, or are you speaking directly into the computer? Or?
I'm using my AirPods. Can you hear me now? Do I have to speak louder?
Yeah, I think it's generally you have to speak louder because AirPods are famously kind of bad on the microphone front. But I use a separate microphone, so just to kind of avoid that issue. But yeah, hopefully, if you don't mind speaking twice the volume at this point, not to wreck your voice or anything, but.
No, it's not a problem.
Okay. All right. Okay, so just to recap, MCP straight into waitlist, working on refactoring, fixing the issues causing the multiple logouts or frequent logouts. Anything else you have to share on in terms of either roadmap or things that are priorities outside of moving to the new kind of dev and rollout structure?
Not too much more than that. I mean, we are undertaking a transition at this stage, right? And moving people and ways of working from where we were before into where we need to be to allow the business to scale is an undertaking that needs to happen, which means that for us, it's a matter of balancing out the movement of human beings into what we feel are scalable structures but also making sure that there is enough priority and focus and momentum to deliver a lot of the promises that we said we would deliver across things like MCP as well as the waitlist to start off with. So these two items are right at the top of our priority at the moment, alongside moving people into the right structures and into scalable structures. So it will take a little bit of time before we start to see those structures kick into full capacity and full momentum. But we believe that we should be doing it now rather than waiting longer, because the quicker we do this, the quicker we absorb and take on the pain of making human changes like this, the quicker we can reach the rewards on momentum and on capacity basis.
Great. Okay. All right.
Yeah, I might just jump in there. Sorry, just quickly. Mitch, do you have an update on crypto pay-in and how many people, or crypto gem, where we're at on that beta rolling?
Yeah. So on the crypto paying front, we paused it for a little while again. So we've got roughly about 12,000 people on board right now, and we're seeing good results from that. We are waiting for this code drop as well to come through, because we fixed some of the initial issues that we have seen on the crypto paying front. And we didn't want to open up the beta and run more of the same issues coming through. So once we have executed this next release, we should be opening up crypto pay-in all the way to 20,000.
Perfect. And just quickly, if people still can't hear Mitch, I've just seen in the stage chat, you can click on his profile and turn his specific volume up. So that might help you on your end if you can't hear that. I can hear you fine, so
yeah,
it must just be
I tried
something.
that on my end as well, so hopefully that kind of is a universal setting. But yeah,
For sure. And just to follow up on that last question, Mitch, because I've seen it in the chat, people obviously want to know when crypto payout will become an option. I know that we're obviously focusing on crypto pay-in at the moment, but do you have any updates on where that is in the pipeline?
At this stage, it is quite not so high in our pipeline from crypto payout point of view. We haven't focused on that, given that there are more pressing priorities for us to look at in the interim. But as we clear things out of our roadmap and as we start delivering the value back to the community, the focus will come back into all these other payout elements that we have not looked at the moment. But that also will kind of coincide with the topic of payout providers overall. So we're also looking at implementing a proper and a well thought out payment strategy that provides not just only additional alternative payout options, but also looking at getting better coverage for pay-in and for people to be able to buy and transact via gems. So pay-in and payout strategies are being worked on. We're looking at implementing them when we get to them once the roadmap starts to get cleared up.
great.
Thank you.
Just additional context on that, Mitch, in terms of what discussions I've had with legal internally and stuff. Crypto payout, in addition to having that be a lower priority at the moment from just a development standpoint, is also there's still kind of ongoing security review issues with that. I think we've mentioned in the previous AMA. So yeah, it's not a matter of if it's not being a priority, it's just a priority in the grand scheme of making sure that we have a secure solution to make sure that we're abiding by all anti-money laundering, anti-money laundering, laws, etc. So okay, well that's helpful. And then Rhys, happy to have you on stage for a community update. We don't usually get to hear from you on the community update end of things, but let's talk a little bit about what you've been up to. Obviously, there's a lot in the pipeline in terms of OUP and things that you've been kind of working on in order to maintain some momentum for the token, etc., whether it be the OMI token portal or the utility portal, etc. You want to just give us a quick update on what you've been up to?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I might throw to Mitch on this just so that I don't reveal anything.
Okay.
I'm not allowed to reveal.
Fair enough.
More than anything, Mitch, you want to take the part? The hospital class. Here you go. How about it?
Wasn't expecting that, but okay. We can talk about that subject because I think it's about due time that we kind of just talk about it and at least expose some of the things that we're thinking about at the moment, right? So over the last 9 or so weeks, Rhys, myself, and some others have been literally huddled in hours long Google Hangout sessions to talk about MCP and OEP and how what they are positioned as today versus where we think it needs to grow and what we think it needs to grow into. There's been some really cool developments on that front. We're working in the background to think about how we can bring the two components closer together, where they don't work so disparately, but actually work synergistically across the board. So MCP and OEP are two programs that effectively do the same thing, but have different vehicles and mechanisms to incentivize and reward people that participate in those programs overall, but they do reward them currently quite separately. So what we're looking to do right now is to look at how we can architect a synergistic outcome where activity and behavior might be separate for people using OMI versus people just collecting MCP points, but they all kind of land in the same kind of reward pool where the benefits of using OMI and the benefits of just collecting are going to be almost synergistic in nature, so where they come together and you can actually get joint benefits off the back of using both programs.
Yeah, perfect explanation. Much better than I could have given. And I think it's important just to share some of the intention there, right? Obviously, as you said, both of these programs are designed to supplement the collecting experience and give you perks and advantages, but it would be quite confusing to just run two individual programs within the same app. So it really is about bringing that together and giving people who use the app the choice to use whichever program they prefer, or which pieces of each side of the house they want to use. So I think it's really crucial to bring that back together. And obviously, that was always the original intention of this product, to be sure that people have the choice to use whichever system they want to use, and it opens it up to a lot more gamification and arbitrage and a lot more fun, really, and strategy within the collecting experience. So really excited to share some of that when we can.
Yeah, absolutely. The idea and the intent behind it is to make them work, like to really stay away from creating this whole idea of the two classes of users, where there's people that only know crypto and people that don't know crypto. The idea or tokens. The idea is to try and blend that experience together and say, well, this is VeVe, and you can choose to apply whichever method you want to apply to move up in a rank or move up in a level, and then expend some of these points for rewards that will benefit you as an individual. The choice should be with the user itself. So that's where we're trying to land, trying to find the synergy between the two programs. And I think we've landed on a really, really good spot.
Yeah, I agree with that. And it, the system is the first stage of that. It also then feeds into our larger education strategy, I suppose, to help people that aren't comfortable with crypto or tokens to understand it and understand it in a safe manner within our ecosystem. Because that's how VeVe was always designed. Right? It was always meant to bridge that gap and introduce people to this new world of Web3 without having to go through the learning curve of keys and blockchains and all the accoutrements that come with crypto. So it's definitely what we're at.
Yeah. Great. I still remember the time where I tried to learn how to acquire some home enforcement.
Oh yeah, and then you got to learn how to bridge it. Then you got to learn how to do this and that. I mean, it's one thing to learn crypto. So to bring that back together in a cohesive strategy for the user, based around the user and with non-crypto users in mind, I think is it's a really strong point to be operating from.
Great.
All right, excellent. All right, so thank you very much, gentlemen, for that. Looking forward to seeing what comes of a a better unified program for people to make that choice, as you mentioned. It's definitely something that we do keep at top of mind. The community that we have in place now, coming from Web3 or coming from crypto, as well as attracting a new, broader audience that may not know those things, and helping usher them into the Web3 world with educational tools. Or, if they choose not to go down the token utility path, then they can just collect if they like. And so at the end of the day, we're really looking forward to, catering to both audiences, because we do find, value and importance in the audience as a whole. Collectors at heart means that we are collectors at heart, right? It doesn't mean collectors only. just FYI, in case anybody had.
Right, it's about choice. It's about choice and it's options, right? Like, just further on that topic we provide PNOEP, the premise and the expectation I want to kind of outline to people that are in this room is that, we are working on enablers that need to be put in place. So, for example, MTP has to be rolled out first, because that's where the focus is going to be. That's the points, the ranks, and the points, ranks, and the levels, which is what we're trying to get to at the moment. Then the next bigger piece around MTP is how you expend those points, because we're not just on just collecting points. We want to try and make that ability to expend your MTP points to provide you benefits across the VeVe sphere in itself, something that is at the forefront. We want to put that at the forefront of the community's minds as they go into a drop, for example, right? So the idea would be to follow up MCP ranks, levels, and points with the ability to actually expend some MCP points and be able to try to reap some of those benefits of those of your hard-earned MCP points and collected points over the last couple of years. And then from there, we'll start moving into, that'll give us enough time to really solidify the approach to how we bring the two loyalty programs together. So the focus will be on MCP right now. And then as we build out those capabilities and as we start to move and develop into the ability to expend points, what we're then looking at is how we can bring in the OUP component and allow that to feature quite relatively prominently. That's one word. The feature in the expenditure of points as well. So we want to bring those two closer together, but we do think it needs to happen almost linearly, because it is something that we need to make sure that we get right in terms of the balance of experiences and the way that the point system needs to work together. So that hopefully outlines, from an expectation point of view, the sequence of events that we're looking and that we're planning for right now.
Great. Okay. Thank you very much. All right. So just past the half-hour mark, I think what we want to do at this point is probably take some questions. I know there's been some questions in the feedback channel. Rhys, if you could do me a favor and maybe pick some out of there, and I'll get some people on stage as well. Then we can spend some time just addressing feedback and questions that you may have that we haven't covered already. So let's go ahead, and if you want to send a request to speak, please do so now, and I'll try to bring some people up as we go here. Let's see. It's been working on this. Usually we're like full by now, but I don't see any requests.
Oh, there's one. Yeah, so they're coming in. There's definitely some questions in the event stage as well. I don't know if we've touched on this before, Alex, and I know you love web marketing, but obviously people saw a bit of marketing prowess go out last week with Lamborghini, CoinDesk and things like that, picking it up. We've obviously released, Corey is now putting out these informational videos. Do you want to just touch on some of those new things where people could find content and information as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So, as you may have seen, we are now doing our best to break down videos and specific collectible videos. I think we've done one now around Frank Kozic's recent Labrador drop. But yeah, that's all part of like the kind of the general content marketing plan, right? And so marketing is inclusive of a number of different things. It's not just advertising, right? It's how everything ladders up into the general strategy of outreach, visibility, SEO, search ranking, etc. So all of the things that need to happen from an infrastructure standpoint are things that I've been focused on. So onboarding a new CRM, which is customer retention marketing, email platform, building out user journeys, starting to do some light, testing in terms of different messaging and creative across a small number of, paid ads to very specific targeted audiences. I think some people may have been in that targeting list and have noticed and have sent them around on Twitter. But, as we continue to ramp up the marketing efforts, what we're doing right now is what I like to call, reconnaissance. It's figuring out what people are reacting to, what messaging works the best, and doing a lot of A/B testing in terms of what the creative is, but also making sure that data is kind of tracking through our backend and our dashboards, to making sure that we are putting out the most effective kind of outreach possible. And that also pertains to things that we're doing with Corey in the content marketing front, is to making sure that there is some visibility in terms of content that is related to VeVe and or drops in the grand scheme of the licensors that we have, be it Marvel, Disney, etc. So people can start to make those connections, and the search engines can start to make those connections. And as we migrate the blog from Medium to VeVe.me, you'll start to see more and more of those things working together, in tandem to create more credibility and recognizability for collecting NFTs, digital collectibles, etc. in the space as a whole. And so you'll start to see a lot more, in terms of marketing, you'll start to see a lot more expanded kind of targeting outreach into some of the paid kind of social, as well as the paid kind of search marketing, as well as just general kind of blog activity in terms of getting people onto the platform, explaining, the differences between the token side of the house versus the collectible side of the house, carbon neutrality, all of the things that kind of make up this big piece of the puzzle that is, digital collectibles and Web3 and the NFTs, etc. So all of that is kind of just happening in tandem. It's just kind of a slow buildup. It's never was intended to be a matter of, hit the marketing button, go, and all of a sudden you're going to see ads everywhere. It's all about that slow burn and slow and fact finding, user behavior affinities, etc. But I'm really happy with the videos Corey has been making thus far. We've really started to work on mapping out like an editorial calendar for social, as well as kind of general marketing outreach in terms of licensor partnerships, synergies in terms of events, and things of that nature. So really excited about really getting the machine going, if you will.
Yeah,
all right.
Definitely going, which is great to see. All right, I've got a few from the feedback channel, if we're happy to.
Okay, yeah, let's go.
There is one, I'll just address quickly. Sass for God says you're worried about taking your phone out because of the area you live in, and is requesting 2FA to list marketplace items. I don't think that's in our plans at the moment. We're definitely trying to sort of refine those processes. But I would say, if you're genuinely fearful of things like that, I mean, you can obviously use VeVe on the web now. If you're genuinely scared of your phone being taken from you or something like that, I mean, you should obviously have personal security on there, PIN codes and whatnot. But you could also delete the app and use it on the web app only, and then that would eliminate that problem. So
this is a good question. In fact, Mitch, I noticed on Twitter, I think over the weekend you were a little active, fairly active in answering some folks. You did mention at some point introducing biometrics. Is that something you can touch on, at least as far as a wish list item for the app?
Yeah, I think I will touch on that. It's a thing that has definitely been on my mind. As in, why log in so hard, right? Like, it shouldn't be so hard. And from everything that we're seeing with the log out issue, it's more than just the log out issue is a symptom, but the real underlying problem is that people find it really hard to get back in. And a lot of this hard to get back in has been unfortunately manufactured due to security concerns that we had with people probing the password failure of different accounts and all that type of stuff when people are trying to hack certain accounts. So the 2FA was put in place, but without corresponding UX to allow people to understand when they are almost at the limit of the attempts that they have on a wrong password. And that actually then kicks people off into what we would call a holding pattern for 15 to 30 minutes, depending on how many attempts that you've had. But it doesn't actually tell you that that is the case. So what we're going to try and do now is bring some of that, common sense elements back from a UX point of view. And then as we kind of dive deeper into the onboarding domain and the onboarding experience that we have for users, what we're going to try and do is really leverage some of these capabilities on devices nowadays to make the overall entry point into VeVe as seamless as we possibly can. I mean, the question that I posed to the team is, well, the banks use biometrics, why don't we?
Very valid.
Exactly. Perfect. Thank you for that. Okay, we got a couple people on stage here. Let's move first to Danny DeBull. How are you?
Good. How are you guys doing?
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Great.
And I want to thank you first off for having me up and answering some questions for the community. My question is regarding exchanges and the OMI token. Is it accurate to say that you'd have to roll out utility as a prerequisite to getting listed on exchanges?
Not
That's
a
wondering, not a prerequisite.
No, not a prerequisite. I mean, it's definitely desirable, and I think it makes more sense to be lining them up with utility, so that there's an easier way to access the token and verifiable demand. But it's not a prerequisite as such. You could definitely, obviously, we're on exchanges right now, so listings are available, but it's definitely better for those higher tier listings to have that utility available already.
And in terms of the smaller exchanges that just listed us recently, I'm assuming those were like renegade listings. They did that on their own?
Correct. Yeah, and to that point, I mean, have you used either of those exchanges, Danny? Does anyone have any experience with those?
I've not. No, I've not. I've done a little research on that ThingX one, but
anything good to share?
They've seen in the articles that I read, they've gotten a couple of
Perfekt, ich hatte genau dieselbe Frage. Perfekt.
They seem to have similar volume to Bit4X.
Okay.
From my preliminary research.
Yeah,
Is
that's
there
great. Go ahead.
I would say, but is there any timeline? I know like prior in the last cycle, I think we had like 4 exchanges lined up and a couple were due to come pretty soon. Is there any timeline for exchange listings?
I mean, outside of saying that it's a priority, no, we can't really give a timeline, right? I mean, as most of you would know, as soon as you're in talks with these guys, there's non-disclosure agreements, which means you can't discuss anything about it. You can't sort of open any speculation or anything like that. And then the exchanges go off and do their due diligence. They're obviously watching the community. They watch how we interact. They watch everybody's kind of comments and feedback and all those things, because from their point of view, they obviously want to increase their user base, right? And they want to make sure that that's what these listings are helping their business to do. But no, there's no, look, the when exchange is the most frustrating question of my life. I can't wait to be announcing new ones as we go, but there's no more information we can genuinely provide outside of that.
All right, thank you, appreciate it.
No problem, thank you.
All right, Captain VeVe.
What's up, fam? Thanks for having me. I have a question from my live stream, and yeah, it's about MCP. And in the MCP article, it says a percentage of the editions will be available for the raffle. The question is now, how much percentage of the editions will be allocated to the MCP and UUP?
Good question. That is something that we're working through right now. We think that because of the conversation that has happened over the last few weeks, we are working on not just the concepts, but also working on documentation to support the creation of new concepts, as well as articulating what some of these components may change in the reimagination of how these two programs will work together. So those components are due for a update and a refresh in terms of the documentation that we will produce, but we're not going to put that out until we're absolutely certain that we have the right model in place and that it will be fair.
Okay, thanks. Can I do another question?
Mm-hmm.
When is the next VeVe official event? Is it San Diego or?
That's a great question. I did see someone ask about Comic-Con Toronto a second ago as well, and I think we can confirm we won't be there, right, Alex? It's next month.
Not Comic-Con Toronto. We are working towards Fan Expo, which is in August, but nothing has been confirmed yet. So there's a couple of things still on the table that we need to work through and just kind of confirm. But ideally, we would have something before San Diego Comic-Con, whether that's another kind of summer kickoff party or the like. But generally, kind of putting in the final touches on that that event calendar for this year.
Okay, the Fan Expo, do you have a location right now? Or can you say...
Fan Expo is also in Toronto, but again, it's not confirmed, but we're working towards getting some space there.
Okay, thanks. Have a nice day, man.
Yeah, you too. Good to hear from you. The feedback channel?
Yeah, I did see one a second ago. I just lost it. VeVe, I think what it was. I'll just go ad lib here. It was less a question and more a suggestion of, now that we have Corey videos and these new types of content, are we interested in or looking at integrating those into the app itself so that when people open it, they kind of see that info about the next book?
Yes, I'm going to defer to Mitch on this, but just so Mitch, that is something I would definitely love.
I would love for you to have it as well. So as I was talking about earlier, as we move into this domains, there is this very, very specific focus around engagement, and that involves everything that encapsulates not just user-generated content, but also content generated from us as VeVe. So as we start to create and focus in on what these engagement components are, and we're going to start to create functionality that will allow us to converse and engage with the community on the application, and be able to share content like this, not just from us, but also allow the rest of the user base and the community to share content that they so professionally create on the VeVe application as we progress. I don't have a timeline for that at the moment. We're still setting up for that. But like I said before, it does take a little bit of time for us to get into the momentum of delivering things at speed once we move into this new structure. So all I ask is for a bit more patience, but we are working on enabling the capability, and then that capability will then start building the features that we've just talked about here.
Perfect. Yeah, I think that would be great to see in the app at some point. But then, I think we really do need to make more effort to highlight where people can find this information and those resources as well. Twitter is one thing, but pushing people to YouTube and being able to find those as well.
Yes, so the YouTube is the kind of default destination for all of the video content that we're creating. We're sharing that in versions, and smaller, shorter versions, cut downs as we call them, on Twitter and socials as well. We're going to start dabbling more Instagram Reels, TikTok. We're also uploading those full videos to Facebook Watch in playlists, so everything is going to be very easily found as part of the ongoing content marketing strategy. But to be able to have that in the app, obviously, along with some other key messaging elements, whether there's an outage or drop announcements or whatever the case is, having messaging within the app. And I know it's something that Mitch has mentioned before that we're working on in terms of a refactoring of push notifications or engagement, as he just touched on, is going to be very important to kind of keeping the ecosystem humming on all fronts and not just Twitter or the Discord. Right? People are in the app. Some people who are in the app don't really mess around with Twitter or don't mess around with Discord. So we need to make sure that we're updating and communicating the best possible through all manners of communication. All right, so Harvesting Frog. Frog is on stage. Hi, how are you?
Hey guys, how do you feel?
Well, thank you.
Very good.
Hey, very happy to learn about the Fan Expo in Canada. Since I'm in French part of Canada, I'm really like, oh yeah, bullish mode. I can't wait about it. Alex, please push for it. We want it so much.
Doing my best.
Okay.
We have a lot of Toronto fam, a lot of Canada fam out there. We definitely want to come see everybody.
Please do so. My only question is about the interoperability and the fact that VeVe just mentioned a few days ago that they're working on a transaction system for VeVe, and they mentioned the fact that most of the issue is the fact that IMX is not ready with their transaction system. That is still being developed at the moment. Is that right? And do you think is that one of the main reason why we don't have this interoperability on VeVe? I'm sorry.
You're up. I'll field that one, I guess. Just quickly to clarify, VeMate is a standalone third-party application. They don't develop anything for us or specifically to do with us. So anything you kind of see come out of their camp is specifically to their application and their rollout. There are technological limitations for IMX, and it's not a limitation as such, but these layer 2s are very new technologies in comparison to crypto in general, and then in comparison to obviously smart contracts and all of that. So there are some limitations there as to whether that is a specific holdup for us. This is probably more of a David and Dan question. I think it's more of a licensing holdup and establishing our business correctly before we kind of open that kind of capability. Mitch, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, just on the non-technical side, I think a lot of the consideration around interoperability really revolves around conversations that happen with some of our kind of beachhead IP providers, right? And it's not just about opening it up and allowing it to move between platforms. It's really about the IP requirements coming from some of our big partners, and whether we like it or not, sometimes we are beholden to some of these requirements that come from our IPs that need to be worked through thoroughly, and they are not necessarily technical in nature. They are simply legal in nature, and those conversations are happening, but they are quite sensitive topics to be speaking with our IPs with overall, because there are some concerns that they have across where some of that IP might end up and how it can be, from their point of view, their IPs can be protected, and their fundamental concerns around some of these available diff portals at the moment are just not addressable by us at this point in time. So just want to make clear that it's not all technological. It's also a lot to do with the conversations that happen with our partners across the board.
Yeah, that's a good point. I've often said, thank you, Frog. Sorry, man. I've often said that's kind of the the blessing and the curse of working with top tier IP, right? And on one hand, you have top tier IP, and on the other hand, it's sometimes there's a lot of sensitivities, be it legal or branding wise, what you can do in new technology space. Kind of just generally the case. Top tier IP, kind of big licensors like that move a little slower when you want to make sure all the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed, etc. Tend to be a little more conservative, but we're continuing to work with them, communicate with them. As Mitch mentioned, it's sometimes sensitive, but it is also part of an education process that we need to do on behalf of the space with those licensors to make them more comfortable with several ideas across the board, including interoperability. All right, so let's move on to Ryu. Hi, Ryu. How are you?
Hi, I'm fine, thank you. First of all, thank you very much for organizing, taking the time to do this call. I know that all the team is very busy, so much appreciated. I just had one question for Rhys. Is there anything that we as a community can do to, I don't know, show support, help regarding the listing of OMI on the exchanges, or is not something that we can help in any way? Thank you.
Thank you for the question. Yeah, I mean, publicly, of course, right? These guys are always kind of keeping an eye on the projects that they see as prospective listings. And I know, I saw people absolutely pepper a KuCoin post a couple of weeks ago.
Shout out to the homies.
Yeah, things like that do help, right? They absolutely raise awareness of the token and the project. They show that there's an engaged community behind it. And that is ultimately what these exchanges are looking for. So anything in that fashion or that manner, I think is great. I know that things can be frustratingly slow sometimes, and we are quite conservative in the way that we approach these things, and obviously that leads to people's frustrations being vented on Twitter. But I think if that's the path you choose to take, try to make it more constructive so that it doesn't just seem so aggressive all the time. Those things will go a long way to helping the general perception of the company, which obviously helps with listings as well.
Sounds great. Thank you very much.
Thanks,
Great, thank you. All
I
right.
did have one.
Go ahead.
Sorry, I had one just from the feedback, sort of in line with that question, and I've lost it now. But someone asked, are we concerned about the current US regulatory crackdown in terms of the OUP and listings and things like that? Just to kind of add to the point I just made, we have always been conservative when it comes to the US because of this. If anyone was going to try and fight crypto and crackdown, it was always going to be the US government. So no, at the moment, we're not rethinking our stance. Obviously, we are working diligently to combine sort of OUP and MCP into that one holistic program. So you'll see some updates and changes from that, but it's less of a regulatory push to change those things and more of a design standpoint to change those things.
Okay, thank you. All right, we got time for just a few more here before Rhys and I have to jump into the next meeting. Dive Jedi, hi, how are you?
Hello, greetings from the Netherlands.
Hello.
I'm very well. Hello, Mitch. Hello, Rhys. Hello, Alex, and everybody.
Hello, Mr. Jedi.
Yeah, I was just listening, and then I heard Rhys say that an active community and helps to promote the OMI token, which is of course true and great. But there is also the case that our dear Mr. David Yu will be featured in AMA with Binance, as you may know, is also a crypto exchange. And yeah, they are well known in the crypto world, and yeah, I have heard mentioned from other people in the VeVe fam that David will only discuss VeVe and the collectibles, which seems rather odd if you're talking with the largest crypto exchange on the planet. So could you shed some light if David is going to mention OMI when he's talking to Binance, since you expected to do it as well?
Yeah, I mean, I can't put words in David's mouth, and sometimes he goes rogue, so I have no idea what he's going to talk about, if we're being honest with each other. But yeah, look, obviously OMI is absolutely coming to the forefront in terms of how we're progressing with the business, so I would hope that it comes up in their conversation. But just to preface that, the focus of that AMA is definitely on the collectibles, right? It's on licensed IP entering the space, and people listening should expect it to be from that vantage point, more so than from a crypto vantage point. I've also seen speculation that he's somehow announcing a listing or some other stuff after that. It's just an AMA. It's with Binance New Zealand. I just want people to have realistic expectations going into it so that there's no unnecessary disappointment coming out. But on that note, yes.
I didn't expect a listing announcement in the AMA, but
I've just seen that speculation.
It would also be very weird to completely ignore OMI when you're talking to Binance. That would be concerning, at least.
Well, I think just for context, and I get the concern, but the title of the AMA is Premium Licensed NFTs, How Global Brands Are Making NFTs Part of Their Strategy. So I do expect a majority, if not all of the conversation, to be focused on digital collectibles license IP. I would imagine that they're going to touch on, how the token fits into the overall, ecosystem. But again, to echo Rhys's point, I don't expect that to be about primarily about Omi whatsoever.
Yeah, exactly right. And to that point, once Omi is more integrated in the ecosystem, it makes a lot more sense to be able to actually exemplify how it works and where it ties in. But that would be an AMA focused more specifically on VeVe and our product ecosystem, whereas this one looks like it's focused much more on the actual brands, the IP, their entrance into the space. So yeah, I agree. I fully expect Omi to be mentioned at some point, but just be aware.
I will listen to it very closely, gentlemen.
As will I. Actually, to that point, does anyone know when it is?
Nobody knows.
Nobody knows. Okay, I'll find
There's
out.
no date on the thing.
There's no date on the thing, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, well, I'll see if I can find a tweet on it for you, Rhys. Maybe you can retweet it from Ecomi.
Yeah, perfect.
All right,
It
well,
might
thank
be
you.
a pre-record.
Thank you, Mr. Jedi. I appreciate you. Always good to hear from you. We'll hope
Thank
to
you. Have
see
a nice day.
Yeah, take care. All right, everybody. Hey, thank you very much for joining us. It is 2:00. We had a hard stop at this hour for we got to get into other meetings, but I really appreciate your time. We'll have a recap available on Twitter later today, and I believe this was being recorded. If I'm not mistaken, if it is being recorded, it'll be available here in the Discord for playback. If not, I'm sure some YouTubers were streaming it. So hello out there to everybody in YouTube land. And thank you very much again.
Hello
for everybody who
back.
came up and submitted questions. We appreciate your time, and we'll look forward to being back on a video schedule next month if David and Dan can wrap up the travels in time to get something done before end of month. But I appreciate you, and we'll talk to you soon. Take care.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everybody. Yeah.
Ja, schade. Das war's dann wohl. Yes. Give the stream a like, please. Then the stream can see more people. Und ja, für meine deutschen Zuschauer an dieser Stelle, ja, ich konnte die 2 Fragen leider nicht mehr stellen, die ich jetzt hier noch hatte. Aber ich bin auf jeden Fall in Arbeit mit Rhys im April ein weiteres AMA zu machen. Das heißt, dann können wir dort auf jeden Fall nochmal ein bisschen mehr Fragen stellen, was das Ganze angeht. Bestimmt nochmal 2 Stunden oder sowas. Aber ja, Pat, du schreibst es eigentlich RIP-Infos. Ja, also wirklich Infos gab es jetzt hier an dieser Stelle nicht. Also jedenfalls nichts so, wo man sagen kann, okay, gut, damit kann man jetzt wirklich gut arbeiten. Bisschen schade. Fazit, everything soon. Ja, ich würde sagen, es ist... Ja, man hat halt im Prinzip nichts Konkretes, ne? Also wir wissen, dass halt das Ganze kommt und dass es halt alles in Arbeit ist. Aber ja, ich meine, mehr als jetzt hier irgendwie, dass halt sie jetzt im Prinzip auch MCP jetzt gerade noch am Fixen sind, ist, dass halt die nächsten Wochen dann auf jeden Fall, nächsten Tage dann weitergeführt wird. Ja, gibt es jetzt einfach nichts. Aber ehrlich gesagt, wie Energy schon schreibt, ich habe jetzt auch ehrlich gesagt nicht sonderlich viel erstmal erwartet. Und ja, von dem Aspekt her, ich meine, da ist David ist nicht dabei, Dan ist nicht dabei, also da kommt dann eigentlich auch nie wirklich was rum, muss man ehrlicherweise sagen. Also man kriegt dann vielleicht so ein paar kleine Insights, wie was funktioniert vielleicht noch, so auf technischer Ebene, das ist auch mal ganz spannend, das Hintergrundwissen einfach mitzunehmen, aber prinzipiell, ja, kann man das auf jeden Fall heute vergessen. Zum Glück war es jetzt nur 1 Stunde und nicht 2 Stunden. Ja, aber nichtsdestotrotz, ich muss jetzt auf jeden Fall noch hier ein bisschen was machen. Es ist nämlich schon um 11 und ich muss wieder um 5:30 Uhr aufstehen. Deswegen, ich bedanke mich auf jeden Fall bei euch da draußen fürs Zusehen. Gebt den ganzen Stream sehr gerne noch ein Like, damit das noch mehr Leute sehen. Und ansonsten sehen wir uns auf jeden Fall im nächsten Video oder auch im nächsten Livestream. Ich freue mich auf jeden Fall auf euch. Und ansonsten, wunderschönen Abend euch noch. Bis dann, euer Captain. Ciao, ciao.